Go. Gönöll Tisch, Stakat Johann, Wasas Yeti.
Chushugo.
Hey.
Okay, Chushugo. Ich was Sachat Duty. Anybody got any language questions, thoughts, things you want to share?
Yeah, I have a question. So me and Martha Van Heel she was over here with the Cat Six and I hooligan fishing, and one day she wanted to talk to me about my name, Kook. And I was told it was Shada Kook, like the rings of a hat, you know, weaved. Yeah. But she told me, she goes, Kook, it actually is the stalk of a Yana 8. He goes, But anyways, I wanted to get your input on that, what you might know about that.
Yeah, let me go find it. Hold on. Yes, it's the stock. So kuch is the, and so if it comes from that, and if it's related to that, the thing on the hat, it's the stock on the Yana 8. So then there would be an underline on that last X. So you have kuch. And then there's another.
Yeah, a mist of everything. In the middle of everything, kook. Is it like kook? Well, kook. That's how it is, huh? With the underline K?
There's kook, there's kook, there's kook.
Kook. Yeah. They used to call me rice patties there for a minute, a few people.
Yeah, that's rice. There's Martin.
Yeah.
Kook, I think was...
Box.
Yeah, kook, you've got that. Let me get the right spelling for Martin. Yeah, kook is Martin, so kook is rice. Kook is Martin. Yeah, there's a high tone on it. And I'm going to check something. Well, actually, this is good. This is a good timing. So let me show you folks something. I was thinking about just continuing to show you some resources that are out there. So one of them, I don't know if I've got it regularly linked. So I'll put the link here in the chat so you folks have it. But Jeff Leard had a database of all these Tlingit nouns, and so basically working with that data, I just made this. There's a spreadsheet, and from the spreadsheet, I'm pulling a bunch of that information into the new dictionary. But there's more nouns here than anywhere. I think these are all in the Interior Tlingit Noun Dictionary, which has more nouns than any other book out there. So if you're looking for something and you can't find it anywhere else, you can go to there. But the nice thing about having them online is you can look at them on your phone. It's a bit much to scroll through. There's thousands of entries. But I'll show you where to also download a version of this so you can have it on your computer. And the nice thing about the electronic versions is if you hit Command F, or I don't know what was it Windows F on a Windows computer? It's been a long time since I used one. But we could type in K high toned O underline X apostrophe, and this shows us. And we could just kind of go through. There's a number of different ones. They're not all related. Kochitla is a verb, right? So the chitla, but here, I think it's the flower of the Yana 8. And the reason I think it's the flower is because if you look at a picture of Yana 8, which maybe I could find something, what would I call it? cow, parsnip, blossom maybe. So let me try and find an image here. So if I go into images and let's see if I'm going to find one. What I'm looking for is there's this kind of bulby thing that's just under the blossom. It's usually, it's a little kind of a green bulby looking thing. I don't know how else to describe it. And you'll only see it in the spring because they dry up kind of by the fall time. But well, you see it through the summer too. And that is called kuch. So kuch is the flower, yi is below, and yak is a canoe, because it looks like a canoe and it's right underneath that flower. And so the name for that shadakuchu, for the hat with the rings, I think comes from these flowers. And so it's that blossom on the top. So you're flowering, you're blossoming, you're coming into your own. That's where I think if that name is related to shadakuch, then that's what the kuch is. And so the stock is right on, but I do think it's actually the flower part of it.
That's pretty amazing.
So yeah, again, so you've got this list and you go through, and it could be, maybe it's just maybe it's just what you call the whole plant while it's flowering. But this kuch is just really interesting because then it shows us, Tlingit likes to put compounds together. So it's like this set of words that combine to mean this one thing. Okay. Oh yeah, and I said I'd show you folks how to get to let me show you where to access that stuff so you can download it and just have it with you, which I think is important. I guess it's this one. Maybe not. I shared the wrong thing. Okay, so if we go to tlingitlanguage.com, I think it's under resources and beginning materials, maybe. I have to dig around. I do have the audio files for Tlingit on here now. So if you get the CD, but if you want on your computer and stuff, you can download it right here. Like downloading stuff straight from here to a phone doesn't really work. You got to have kind of your computer serve as the go-between. At some point, I'll try and figure that stuff out. Let me see where I could find that. Huh. Okay, I'll send you folks a link if I don't find it. Anybody else?
Was this one of the documents that you had in the syllabus that you told us to download?
I think I just told you to download the dictionary. So this is actually like a big, huge list of nouns, which,
okay.
And I've got a link to it somewhere. It's probably on one of maybe it's on our intermediate page.
Well, you're looking, I had a question just about, when we're in class and you, bring up the Blackboard and you write down what we're talking about and write it all out for us and stuff. Is there any chance that we could get at the end of class, we could get a copy of those, of that electronic file of what you wrote on?
Yeah, we were just talking about this in advanced Tlingit as well. So there's a couple, sometimes I'll put stuff in the chat, and then other times I like to just open a blank document and just start typing the stuff and showing you. And so then what I'll usually do, the chat file saves as like a text file, and then I'll export the notes as a PDF file. So basically, so here's our class page. So tlingitlanguage.com, go to Learning Tlingit and Intermediate Tlingit. So basically what I do is I record the class. At the end, usually at night. It takes it an hour or so to download. Got to put the kids to bed, and then I'll upload the recorded class to YouTube. So usually if you go down here, this is that list I was just talking about. So it's on our class page. It's called the Lear Noun List. It's just a huge collection of, and it's got lots of repeated entries. So it's not the most user-friendly thing, but it's nice to have just this huge list of nouns. But basically, if you go down, you're going to see, so here's the class for September 10th. You can watch the class. And then what I'll start making sure I do is there'll be, so basically it'll say the date. Here's the link to the YouTube video. Here's the content that we go over. And then underneath, here's any slideshow that we did. And then I'll start making sure I put the chat up here so you can just download that. And then I'll also make sure I'm putting any notes that I take. So it depends, if I type it in the chat, it'll be out here under chat. And if I type it on the screen, I'll make sure to do it in a separate document so I can export that later. And then it'll be a PDF here. So yeah, so take notes if you want to, but don't feel like if you don't write it down now that you're gonna lose it. So I'll start making sure I do that.
Thank you. That would be very helpful. I've been copying the chat and pasting it into a document at the end of each class, but sometimes then I miss something in class because I'm doing that.
Yeah. So yeah, don't worry. I'll start doing that because the other class requested it, and it's a really good idea. Because then, if you look at, I'll show you what it looks like. So if you go to Advanced Tlingit, I think I started doing this. So here's the chat. So basically, watch the class. For Advanced Tlingit, I'm going to try to type it all out in Tlingit. So how we're doing, stories, understanding our language. Oh, I don't know, feedback. So then also, are you guys hearing that noise?
Yeah.
Okay, is that on my end or is that, maybe somebody's trying to talk and, okay, we'll figure it out. If you're trying to talk, maybe put it in the chat and then we'll try and figure out if there's some kind of distortion coming through for some reason. But basically, so then there'll be these things that I'll say, I'll put these up for our, so basically on this blog will be everything that we go over that day. So you can review the slideshows. And if you click on the chat, it'll take you to, there's a Google Drive, and this is what it looks like. So it's kind of interesting. It does kind of mess up some of the underlines and stuff. It's a font issue, so I might tinker with it a little bit, and it's one extra step, but if I copy it and paste it into something else, it'll look a little better. So, but then it also says who's saying what. It's kind of fun. So, okay, any other questions or thoughts, things you want to share? I know since we're in about like week 3 here, you're always invited to share some language. Don't worry about it being perfect. If you want us to go over it, I know there was a request out there and I think it's a great idea. Feel free to bring a few sentences. And then you got options. If you just want to share them with us, I think that's great, because then you're starting to put the language together yourself. You're starting to try and figure out how to say some things, and you have to do that kind of work because it helps to reveal where some of the blank spots are for you, so that we can help you fill some of those blank spots. And then, and you don't have to do it, but I really encourage you to. And then you've got 2 ways to do it. You say, I'd just like to share some language, and I'm not looking for any feedback, and we'll just listen to you. Or you could say, I'm looking for some feedback on where this might improve, and I'll be happy to help out where I can and just show you some things that might help improve it. Okay. So anybody got a question? Anything you want to share? Anything you want to say?
Go ahead.
Standoff. Ushtayin Wudanak. They're just facing each other.
Peter, Ginny Kadlias Kit Anagrat. Kayani Kudas Tuwasegu Peter. Yagi Kayane Kudas. Kadu Duasak Sam. My prediction is failing. Peter is not getting his green shirt. I was wondering if there was a word to help me go from Tuwasegu Peter to say but or however. It's Sam who's wearing the green jersey in the Tour de France right now.
Oh, sure. So yeah, you would say whoever it is that wants it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a couple of things. So like if you name them, you don't, and if it's a kinship term as well, the do part kind of becomes optional. So like if I said Achlisk, my grandparent, Achlisk Tuwasagu, so I don't need to have the do in there. So so if you said Peter, in that case, you'd probably want to say Peter awe do Tuwasagu. Just give it a little, that awe gives it a nice little just gap. And then because, just because we can't always be sure if it is a name. Like what if someone has a name and their name means Martin, you know? And so you might just say, and then you would say what they want. Or you could name what they want. So Peter awe kayani yachyati kodastu tawasaku. So I would probably also recommend doing the color yachyati. That way we're also sure that it's a color, because otherwise it could get mistaken as, let me put this in the notes. I'll just say color, which they're all nouns, right? So it sometimes, if you said kayani kudas, someone might think, oh, it's a shirt made out of plants somehow, right? Or if you said, well, and it's not clear to me all the time, because we do have gleit ka, and I've heard gleit yesh, but usually the elders we work with, they prefer us to say yachyati if we're just saying a blue shirt. So then you'd say yachyati kudas. So Peter awe kayani yachyati kudas do tawasagu. So now we've got a kind of a complete thought. Then we'd say ku'a. So ku'a is what sort of gives us the logical shift. Like he wants it, however, I can't remember the other person, Chris. Sam Yawadlak. And so in that case, like Sam obtained it. So so there's wanting it, right? So do tawasagu could be wanting or liking. It'd be the exact same phrasing for both. And then a yawadlak would be, and this is one of the verbs that has lots of different interpretations. So you could say Sam yawadlak, Sam succeeded. But you could say Peter awe Sam yawadlak, Sam defeated Peter. Or you could say we kudas Sam yawadlak, Sam obtained the shirt. So it could mean obtain, defeat. You could also say Peter yawadlak, Peter beat me, he defeated me, right? So it could be involve winning, it can involve losing if you become the object pronoun, and then it could also mean obtaining, or it could just generally mean succeeding, right? So you say yawadlak, we succeeded. So it's a very useful verb, and it has all of those different meanings, and so that's where you'd put the ku'a. There's another one which is cha'an, but that one's a little bit, it's a hard turn, which is sort of like despite that, so you would say, like if I was Sam, I might say, Peter, so Peter, he really tried to obtain this shirt. Nevertheless, I beat him, right? And so that could be the thing where it's like,
I see.
against all odds, kind of. I had a really neat phrase. We were doing these animal descriptions in a language workshop, and we're supposed to guess what kind of animal that they were talking about. And this one elder, her name was Shagun, Sophie Smarch, and she was talking about kunaye, which we don't have them on the coast. They're little, they're brown, run around real fast. Chipmunk, we don't have them here, but they have them up in Teslin, you know, and Carcross. And so she was saying about the kunaye. They have really tiny hands, but despite that, they still exist because they can eat with them. And so it was a really cute little phrase, really fun. Yeah, so thanks, Kashish, for sharing.
Gracias.
I got a question.
Oh.
One more. So if you see what I posted in there, skunk ka I too. I am confused. I don't know why. It's an easy, simple phrase, but something with the ka and the e throw me off of the understanding of how that sentence works.
Yeah, well, one of the confusing parts there is, so there's ka, which could mean a man, and then there's a different ka, which means a person, right? So you can say, and it could also mean male, right? So that's where I think some of the confusion comes in, is there's two different kas, and they are different things. So like I could say, ziskoe, gok, it's a male moose. Go ahead, shoot it, right? So if we're out looking around, because we don't spare the men, you know. But then there's a different one, or I could, when someone's gonna have a baby, they might say, "Kalkoe," is it a male? But then there's a different ka, and this is the one area where Tlingit does have this kind of gendered language, where you might say, "Oh well," but I think it's a different word, and it means person. And so this one is one of the possessive pronouns. So ach is my, I is your, du is his or her. So I say achtla, my mom, itla, your mom, dutla, this person, his or hers, their mom. But then I say katla, which just means mothers of people. So so Tlingit has this fourth person, which gets introduced in a few different ways. And this is a fourth person. So this is why you'd say, ka'i, khashtu, I'm teaching people, right? So then it goes to the people, right? So this is the type of ka that you have in here. And there could be other instances as well. Like you might say, kajishagun, it's a tool of the people. It's something that people use. And so you are going to see the fourth person pop up. And it's just something we're going to have to logically start to make room for in our mind. And we use it in English, but it gets used differently. For example, let's say you brought in some really yummy dry fish, and it's just kind of I had a moment of weakness and you left and I ate all that dry fish. I didn't even share it with anybody. And then everybody comes back and you say, what happened to the dry fish? And I'll say, it was eaten. Yeah. And so like, and kids might do that too. Like, what happened to my glass? What happened to my coffee cup, my favorite cup?
Yeah.
It broke. And so you can talk about the thing happening without a person in there. But then in Tlingit, this is where the subject is du. So in here you have tu. It's being taught. People are doing it. So you can have this sort of just people pronoun, which we'll just keep an eye out for it. Because it's not a simple sentence. It's a hard sentence because it's saying people are teaching people at school. And it's really challenging to translate into English because English doesn't really have true equivalents. You could say someone is doing it, but a similar thing. So chacha is I'm eating it. Chwacha, I ate it. Kakwacha, I'm going to eat it.
Yeah.
But you could also say duchayi at aweh. So what the du is doing right there is saying people eat it. So that's why, like, let's say we're hiking and we see like some berries and they're very dark and they're tall. And I'm like, duchayi at with kayak. No, you're gonna die if you eat that one. So is it edible? Right. And so as we start describing some things too, we were playing a game in advanced Tlingit where I gotta think of something, then you ask me 20 yes or no questions and you gotta try and guess what I'm thinking of. It was really fun because people know how to ask some of the other questions. They'd be like, what color is it? I was like, no, you can't ask that. You gotta pick a color and say, is it that color? Because then they got to come up with something a little different than they've done before. But then that's if we started to sort of talk like it's an animal and say, and odds are pretty good. We eat almost everything that crawls around and walks around, but not everything, but a lot of them. But that's what's going on with the ka-e.
Because see, because the E part, I thought of you automatically, and and that's with the ka. I was like, I just was baffled because I've never used it so generalized before,
Right, because you're going to use this E, and what the E does. So like sometimes when things go like to people, like talking to, telling it to, helping, those ones are going to have a different construction than others, right? Because you could do something to somebody, right? I could say, Ich sechan, I love you. And we could start changing those around. Everybody could love everybody. But then there's these other ones like telling it to somebody. Tlingit has a different structure.
Oh.
That's where the E is like, ach it idishim. And so if you've never encountered that before, we're going to go through some steps where you're going to get introduced to that very concept. Because this is where you'll hear people say ach in, ach it, ach ide, and then it could change, right? So I could say hastu in kananik, tell them, right? So now you're going to learn how to use that, both what's going on right before the E and then that E itself.
Okay, thank you. I guess when I thought of ka, like people, I was like ton, kon, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, and so there's lots of ways to say people. Like kon is like this. Now we're getting into the Tlingit culture and these specific kind of states within a nation, the ancestral folks of a particular place.
Right, specific.
Right, like I could move to Huna, but I'm not going to be Huna Kawu.
Oh,
it's not going to happen, right? But I could, I could be Shkut Kwan. And so that's the Kwan part. And so this is where sometimes these folks be like, oh yeah, well, I met these folks from Fiji, so they're the Fiji Kwan. I'm like, it doesn't work like that because it's got to be tied to ancestry, and they could be Fiji Ku'u. That's fine. The people of Fiji. So, anyways,
well, that's fantastic. I know I can use that in a broad term referring to people now. That's great. Thank you.
Okay, let me copy an invitation real quick. Okay, any other questions? Let me turn my notifications off. Okay, so yeah, bring things you're thinking about, bring things you want to share. You're all invited to do that, and that helps to supplement the stuff. And as we go further along, it's going to change from an open invitation to a prescription. So we're not there yet. We get time to ease into things, but pretty soon, like I'll get to the point of like, okay, go make this type of thing, come back and share it. right? And have fun with it. Use pictures. Pictures help a lot. Make a little slideshow. We went berry picking, and it just make it really simple, because simple is a great place to start. Don't go translating Shakespeare, or don't try to, come with all these concepts in English and like, how do you say inspiration? Like, just don't even do stuff like that. Just use common language, the stuff that we use to talk, and then get yourself up to the big things. Like, you want to tell those big Raven stories and stuff. You can certainly get there, but okay.
I have a short story I wrote. If you feel like it would be a good time to look at it, might be really bad and really boring.
Let's take a look. Excited.
Okay, ich satini. All right, let's see if I can share a screen here. Stand by. Nietzsche skasnik away. All right. Tatge chat ka ach shat stand-up paddleboard asach I de chwakuch. Audigan away. Echini ka sha ka yai chatin. Ach tu sagu. Nietzsche gishu li chwacha. Slek yesh yati. Yechte gishudli chasine. Akshat gishudli tlech isine. Dasa adane.
Okay. Let's see. Okay.
And I'm totally open to critique and would love to be able to say this correctly.
So it's fun because there's a verb that's probably technically kuch, but it might not be kuch because it's not really on a boat. There is a verb, I think it's awakit. Let me double check. So the verb is basically paddling yourself, which is kind of fun because in Tlingit, there's two ways to paddle. So you could paddle, if we're all in a canoe and we're all paddling on all sides, then that's cha. So you'd say watu cha, which sounds exactly like we ate. It really is difficult to tell the difference between those two. But in this case, you would say ade wudit eek, chwadit eek, or wutudit eek, which is pretty unusual. It's an unusual verb, but that means I put my paddle on this side, I put my paddle on that side, which is probably kind of what you're doing, right? But you can also say watuwacha. You kind of got some options. I'm a fan of using, because Tlingit gets very specific with all of its verbs. Audagan awe is great. Awe has tones on both the vowels. Yeah, so you would change chatin to chwatin because it has already happened. And then achtu sagu, yeah, so probably achtu sagu, so just a W before the sagu, that's all you need to do to put that one into the perfective. So this is when you say nich de gishudli chwacha. So if you're doing something at a place, then you'd put the X apostrophe right on the end of nich. Otherwise, it sounds like you're doing the thing towards. So you could be either eating your way to the beach, or you could be paddling your way. It sounds almost like paddling with a piece of bacon, which is kind of fun. But in this case, so X and then the apostrophe at the end. But that's a really good thing, because then basically you say any kind of noun, any kind of place, and then you get, and you say, we did that thing at that place or at that time, because Tlingit treats time and space identically. So for example, I could say, Tatge gishutliyechocha, I ate bacon yesterday. But I could also say, Nich gishutliyechocha, I ate bacon on the beach. So it's going to use the same type of technique. Okay.
Sheesh.
Ah,
Have you ever heard glee called glee? Glee instead of glee?
so glee. Well, that's another good point. Is gishu glee would be like ham, or like just some kind of pork chop, or like a ham sandwich or something. Gishu tayi would be bacon. Gishu nasi would be sausage. Glee, without the possessive marker, means muscle or flesh. Like, so there's another
Just
fun
glee.
part. It's another fun part with Tlingit is we don't have a whole bunch of separation between what things are and what we eat. Whereas English, it's like, oh, we don't eat, they'll say, you want some pig muscle? Oh, pig muscle, bring it on, right? Instead, you'd say, would you like some pork? Right. So not only does it change from saying flesh to meat, but then it often changes from like what the thing is to these. Let's have poultry. Let's have some beef. Let's have, they got all kinds of. We got into this big argument about like, what do you call? What's the name for the baby sheep? Anybody know? Lamb, right? Because we're having lamb, and someone was freaking out because they thought it was like a baby. And I said, oh no, this is. I think when people have like a bourgeois kind of a dinner, they don't like to say sheep, even though it's delicious, and they don't like to say mutton because they don't want to sound like it's a class issue. So they'll say lamb, which sounds like you're eating a little baby, which I guess is better than the others. I don't. So then we're in this hot debate, and people are like, "No, that's a baby." I was like, "It's not a baby. It's a big old piece of. It's not baby-sized meat." Anyways, I'm way off the map here, but okay, that was great.
I hear you.
Thank you for sharing. Sorry for my lamb rant. Okay,
That made a lot.
what's that?
It's
So
all good.
let's shift gears for a second. Have you folks seen little readings in Tlingit before? Tiny kind. So this is a book about, well, these are little phrases in Tlingit. And I really like to use this to teach like some just little nuances in Tlingit. When you start moving from beginning to intermediate to advanced, you're doing a bunch of just little nuanced stuff. And don't ever feel bad if what you tried to do doesn't come out right, because it's just a whole bunch of little pieces at this point, and we're just fine tuning those little pieces. But you're all in the neighborhood. So what I'd like you to do, because this also moves us from single phrase or single sort of word to sort of bigger language chunks. So you're going to say these little phrases, and they're pretty short, but they're also pretty complicated. But there are also some more common types of things. And so what I'm going to show you is there'll be some stuff on a screen, and there'll be 1 or 2 sentences. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like a volunteer to just read it, do your best, and then I'll read it after you. Then I'll ask if anybody could translate it. So when it comes to the reading part, I would like everybody to try. So if you haven't read yet, then don't let us sit here and just wushet and just stare at each other's faces, but chime in. And if you're translating a whole bunch, awesome, but maybe take a breath and let someone else give it a shot. And even if you just only recognize some words and stuff. So it's a balance between we don't want to have too much silence, but we also want to give everybody a chance. So this was made by Vesta Dominics. I'll show you folks the title page. Wonderful book. I really got to give a lot of credit to Jim Samard, who was working at the archival library, found this text that was made back in the 80s, I think, and scanned it and scanned a whole bunch of stuff. And so he sent me some links, and when I saw it, I was like, this is wonderful. We're gonna put this back into use. So if you compare this one to the older version, there's a few spelling updates, but it doesn't alter the content at all from what Ms. Dominics left for us. And she did such wonderful, wonderful work. It's a project that was initially funded by the National Bilingual Materials Development Center, which made a bunch of stuff. And I'll show you where a bunch of these older Tlingit texts are if you don't have them. And then the update was funded by Global Heritage Foundation. So can I get a reader for the first two sentences?
Dasawe ashuk. To kick away hint would zigit.
Yak eh, gonna sheesh. Dasawe ashuk. To kick away hint with the git. Let's start with the first line. What do you folks recognize in here?
Toss away, what is?
What is?
Ashok, the same as ashok, like laughing.
Yes. Yeah, so if you're in Teslin and sometimes Carcross, they'll say ashok because
That's
you two O's and then there's an underlying consonant on one side of those O's. That's all you need to go from oo to O. So now we know ashuk is laughing, but then there's a couple other components. So like how do we put it all together? Take it and
What are they laughing about?
yes. So in this case, so we get a picture. And the Tlingit is not, this sentence has no gender in it whatsoever. When we move it into English, we kind of get, they is a great pronoun, I think, for singular, because Tlingit does, it's she or he or whatever. And so you could look and say, oh, maybe that's a girl, but we could just say they. What are they laughing at? Okay, so they're laughing at something, right? And so when we learn more about the laughing, you can say, atchashuk, I'm laughing. And I could say, ichashuk, I'm laughing at you. And so you got to be careful, right? What about the second one? Any part. Oh, go ahead.
Hint would be they fell in the water.
Yeah, they fell in the water. And then
Is that sister?
yes, and in this case, and so here's another thing where this isn't gendered, but in the kinship structure, it is gendered. So keek is a younger sibling of the same gender. So for the males, your keeks are going to be, those are the men, the young men, your younger brothers. And the keek is a really interesting term because they don't have to even be blood related. They're both Tachdein Tan, about the same generation. One of them's going to be the keek. And it's pretty fun too. Kinship in Tlingit is really fun. A friend of mine, we're getting really close, as close friends. And we're different clans, but both on the Raven side. And he was saying goodbye. And he was like, keek. So he tried out this kinship term, which it's not always even clan related. Sometimes personal relationship. But then as soon as he said keek, I said, how old are you? And he was younger than me. So I was like, you're the keek. You're making my coffee next time, right? So it's fun. So in this case, we can maybe guess that she's a girl. And then this is one where we'd probably have to put gender in the English sentence. Or you could just say, their younger sibling fell in the water. Or her sister fell in the water. Okay, so there's a couple things, again, to unpack here. Ashuk has an object and a subject. We'll learn how to change those. So you could say, who's laughing at whom? It's built into the very front of the verb right there. There's actually two things right there. One of them you can't see. Then we have, Tlingit likes to put information right up front, right? So you say who it is, then you say what happened. What is she laughing at? She's laughing at her little sister because she fell in the water, basically. Or her little sister fell in the water, and that's what she's laughing at. Hint, so the T part is what makes it like at or arriving at. So now you can put any noun there and you fell onto that noun, right? Kat wutsikit, fell on the floor. Hint wutsikit, fell in the water. But we don't want people to fall in too many more places. We don't want people to fall at all, really, but the wutsikit is the falling part. Okay. Ask questions if you got them. Otherwise, we'll keep going. Can I get a reader for these 3 sentences?
I'll try.
Okay.
I seek Akwe Kadagak Kadagak Dushi Kut Wujinek.
Okay. I was just talking to someone about this. They said, what does this X sound make? And I was like, oh, it's like a jet airplane taking off. It's like the wind. It's like a cappuccino machine. So it's like Alaska Airlines. They're just Xing all over the place. So that's what that sound is. So when you have the E in between it, you have he. Isik akwekadakach. Dudushi kutwujahi. Okay, first sentence. Anything you recognize, and it's okay if you don't, but just make a prediction, make a guess.
I'm gonna go off the deep end here, but is this your little daughter?
Yep. So your daughter is Sikh, right? And so here's, we watch out for this akwe thing, or this ge. It could be either one. So plus ge plus we gets us akwe. This is the yes or no question in Tlingit. The ge is the yes or no particle. And whatever it comes after, that's the thing we're asking about. So it's not, is your daughter kadaqachin? No. What we're asking, is that your daughter who's kadaqachin, right? And what is kadaqach? Anybody look at the picture and got a guess? Crying. And not just like a little silent tear. This is, that's the kadaqach, right? That's a loud cry.
Bawling.
Yeah. Is that your daughter bawling? Right? And so, and this is where Tlingit, there's just some really cool things that this little book shows us. Where to put this akwe. And so we know that person's crying, but is that your daughter? That's what we're asking. And we get, yes. I'll translate that one. What about the last one?
That's scratching?
Not scratching. Not hiding.
But there's a cat.
There's a cat. So again, so now it's a daughter. So we'll go ahead. We can add some gender to it. Her
ran away.
Ran away, right? So wujahih is for something ran. right? Like wugut, wujahich, wukuch. Those are all types of ways to go. But Tlingit always wants to show where did they go. And once you put kut in front of it, that means lost. So you could say, ha, kut, I got lost, right? In this case, and then kut wujahich has some different, it's not just getting lost, right? So we don't want it to happen. Let's say two people are married and then, you know, something happens and someone's like, oh, what happened? And you're like, oh, and that means one of them left the other one, right? So it could, in this case, you could interpret it as ran away, but it could also mean got lost. And so it depends on the context, like it's literally got lost, but sometimes you're just saying ran away. And so, whoops, different communities are different. I want to show you folks something. What did I do? Messed it all up. So Isi is your daughter, but if you are in Teslin, Isi is more like your doll, and Isik is your daughter. But that's not the case everywhere. I did make an adjustment to this slide for the Teslin folks because we're going over it there. Okay.
I got a question about that.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying about that. My great-great-grandma used to sing this song to my aunties, and they were talking about the doll, but she was referring to the doll as the kid's child.
Yeah.
And you know, Shawat Kadonk, EC Kadonk, EC, EC.
Isi, right? So C is a daughter or a doll. That's the Tlingit word for doll. And so if you put the K on there, that apostrophe, that pinch K, ejective K, people will know that it's a daughter then. They wouldn't guess doll once they heard that.
Oh, good, geez.
Okay, next reader, Gook.
Kant uanuk achit shash away du tua ushku shaudu kashi.
Okay, Kant uanuk achit kashawe du tua ushku shaudu kashi. First sentence, Kant uanuk achit. Anybody recognize anything in there?
My
Somebody.
son is mad.
Oh, go ahead, Star.
Oh, my son is mad, or
Yes. So, you know, and so we're going to talk about word order here for a second. And in Hawaii, when they start teaching people how to put sentences together, they use the he'eh, they use the naq. They say it's like an octopus with these tentacles. And so Kant uanuk is a tentacle and achit is a tentacle. And you can move them around. But for Tlingit, the most important thing is going to go first. So, you know, if you'd say, oh, he's mad, my son, right? But my son is mad is absolutely correct. But I just want to talk about a word order thing. And part of that word order thing is also, if you get asked a question, then you answer with, the first thing is usually what answers that question, right? So if they said, who is it over there? Then you would say who it is, right? And the example I like to use is like, let's say a teenage kid comes home real late and you say, where have you been? And the kid says, I'm going to bed, right? So it's like the question, the answer must match the question, right? And so in this case, and so now this also shows us a whole bunch of fill in the blank things. You could put any kinship term in that you want to right there. Oh, her grandma's mad. My wife is mad. ikik, your younger sibling, is mad. Now everybody can get mad, right? Okay. Anybody who hasn't taken a shot at translating yet, want to show us some things in here, make some bold predictions?
He's not happy with his haircut.
Yes, yes, right. So tleshtu tuwa ushku would be didn't want or doesn't like. So yeah, there's two ways to interpret this. The awe, it doesn't have to be there. It sounds nice. You could say tleshtu tuwa ushku, and then you can also say some verb. Now, tleshtu tuwa ushku is usually going to be interpreted as doesn't want, or didn't want. Right? It depends. And then we've got the verb, which is in the perfective, so it has already happened. And so chash is the verb root here for cut. Once we put sha on front of it, you're not cutting heads, you're cutting hair, right? So that's how you talk about haircut. And so that's where the word for scissors comes from, ka, sha, chasha, cutting people's hair, the one that cuts people's hair. That's where the name comes from. Yeah. Okay, very good.
Mind if I ask you a question?
Good.
Tuwa ushku, is that like saying inside, and then it's like ushku is like ushke?
They are very similar things. Yeah, so there's a set of verbs that have is, isn't, and opposite. So you could say yak-e, it's good. You can say kesh uk-e, although nobody really does, it's not good. And you could say kesh ushke, it's bad. Similarly, you could say, well, and there's not really a middle one for this one, but you could say shechet, lucky, kesh ushchet, not lucky, kesh ushchet, unlucky. So it's kind of a fun thing. So this is one, so it's something to remember. There's a couple of different verbs. One is once you put the kesh on there, that verb has to change. It must change from the positive form, right? And so these are some things you're just gonna have to, chwasaku, I know it, kesh chwasaku. So it just sounds a little bit different, and you're going to learn what those specific things are that need to change. But in this case, ach tuwa sagu, I want it, I like it. Kesh ach tuwa ushku, I don't. So basically, the tuwa has to do with like an inside, something inside of you. So something inside me, sagu, is happy. Something inside me, kesh ushku, is unhappy. So it's basically like that makes me unhappy. So I don't want it.
What would be the difference then, instead of saying, he's mad he didn't want to have his haircut, is he didn't like his haircut? Like he's mad he had a bad haircut, or he didn't like his haircut. How would that be different?
So basically we have this, so the way that this would kind of look on its own, it would look a little bit different. It changes because it's tied to this, right? So the other thing you're also going to learn is you throw the basic starting point is you throw this I at the end, right? So ihsatin, I see you. Yakay ihsatini, it's good to see you. So when you tie two verbs together, that's the basic way to start doing it, is whatever the thing that you're happy about or unhappy about, it gets that I at the end. So shaudut lechash, their hair was cut. right? So that's what that one means. Shaututlichash, their hair was cut. And so let me put that in the chat. So what you would do, there's a couple little kind of advanced tricks to verbs. One is you're going to throw just a letter I on there and the word yeah at the end. And you're going to see yeah all over the place if you look at place names. Yande stak yeah has yeah built into it. And so what you have is usually a verb and then yeah. Now this means the place where that verb happened. So, you know, be like, oh, that's the place he got his hair. I don't know, like maybe like Brad Pitt went into like this barber shop or something. I don't know why. But now it becomes this place where the verb happens. But then the place where the verb happened. So you could take any verb and you basically, a starting point, it's a little bit more complicated, but you throw that I on there and then you get yeah. And that means, and there's a whole bunch with Raven. Like, so you say, the place he walked across, right? And so that's what the yeah does. When you put a day in front of it, so basically we could say verby yeah, place where the verb happened. A day verby yeah, the way the verb happened. So now we're not just talking about the way their hair was cut. So here, now this is how you tie these two things together. So you would say, but in this case, like you probably wouldn't use the didn't want. You would probably say, yeah. He's upset about the way his hair was cut. So now that's where you tie in. And this is a really neat, if you've been studying Tlingit for a while, this verby yeah thing is a really neat thing to learn how to do. So now you can say, I'm happy about the way you talked. Oh, that was really good, the way you wrote that, right? And so now this is how we talk about the way the thing happened, which is a neat step from, in beginning Tlingit, we're just learning all these little phrases, but now we're going to start getting into we need to start talking about stuff. And part of it is just saying like the way things happened, the place that things happened. And it's a really neat little formula to learn because it's one of the less complicated form. You just throw yeah at the end, right? And this little it thing. Then you throw a day in front of that, and now you've got this other thing. Wow, that's a good question. Okay, we'll do one more, then we'll take our break. Can I get a reader?
I can read.
Mm-hmm.
Iat akwe du yadi al shat click a clock away.
Okay. Iat akwe du yadi al shat click a clock away. First sentence. What do we got?
The akwe is the same as gay. We're asking a question.
Yeah, so and once we put akwe, the way we look at that one is that, right? Yakakwe, is that a boat? Kashakasha akwe, are those scissors, right? And then, so now we're gonna get to the other stuff too. So what about the iat part?
Aunt or sister?
It's an aunt, so it's your paternal aunt or aunt. So it's your father's sister. And so some of these kinship terms too, like let's say your dad was Daklawedi. All those women of your dad's generation will be achat. And it could be any of them. It kind of depends on how you look at it, right? It could be any female who was daklawidi. You could call them akhat. So your auntie, your paternal auntie, is that your paternal auntie
Holding your child.
holding their child, right? And so again, where the akwe tells us what the question's about. Is that your auntie? We know she's holding her child, right? So you could say, "Iatwe, do you get a shot?" Your auntie, is that her child she's holding? Iat away, do you get a shot again? Is your auntie holding the child? And so, like, again, the get can float around. Some of our habits are just to throw it at the end, right? Like a question mark. But Tlingit doesn't work like that. It has this ke, or in this case, akwe, that comes right after what we're asking. Is that your paternal auntie holding her child? Like, no. Aklak away. What's that one?
Mom?
Not quite mom.
My mom's sister.
Yes, yes. So it's a maternal aunt, which it could be very close. And again, with these kinship terms, if you're shukach adi, this would be all those mama-aged shukach adi women. They would all be akhlaq. And what I heard is it was pretty common that your mother's blood sisters, you would call them all akhtla. Not all the time, but that was pretty common. They would all be, but akhlaq would be my mother's sisters. And so again, so I really like this little reader because it's talking about kinship. It's talking about just sort of, it's got these little phrases, but there's so much stuff you can unpack. And at this intermediate level, it's a bunch of stuff we're really just ready for. And if you felt like it was kind of over your head, don't worry, because it just sets the table for the type of stuff you're gonna learn. And then we're gonna switch over back to the beginning Tlingit workbook and start going through that. But this is kind of the class path. But take 5, come back, and before we switch to the beginning Tlingit workbook, I would like you to propose or think about, I might give you a couple of days, but if you have ideas on a midterm and a final, I put something in the syllabus, but I'm always open for negotiating. What sounds like a fun yet challenging project for you? And so we're going to talk about that because you're going to have a midterm and you're going to have a final. I'm not really big on like hardcore quizzes. I like for us to just do stuff in the language and then to work together and then to kind of perform it. That just feels more celebratory to me, and that's what I think we should do, is stuff that's fun and relevant rather than stuff that causes any suffering. So get some water, take your bio break, do whatever you need to do. We'll be back in 5.
Whoa, honey. Oh my gosh. Are you amazing or what? I know, but look at you. Wow.
I'll figure out how to float that back up even, and then I'm just gonna try to paint it. Match.
Wow.
How much I have left over for this transition. Talking about elevations.
Okay. So for midterms and finals, I really like projects, like some sort of, the doors are open here. If we want to work in pairs and write dialogues, we could do that. A little skit, you could do that. If you wanted to do, I don't know, we might do some, I guess I would lean towards some sort of performance for a midterm and some sort of translation exercise for a final. But if you feel like that's maybe you're a little intimidated by that, we can look at bumping the translation work to next semester as well. So I kind of had in the syllabus that you would make a vocabulary list and just kind of recite it from memory, but I don't know, I think that's a good beginning Tlingit activity. So, and we don't have to decide right now, but if you have ideas or thoughts, now's a good time to chime in with what you would like to do in terms of, you got to demonstrate some language knowledge, some abilities. Again, it's the first class after beginning Tlingit. So in the past we've written letters. And so I write a one-page letter to somebody. That's a pretty fun project because then you could pick who some people wrote it to siblings. Some people wrote it to the language learners. Some people wrote it to an ancestor who's gone from them now. So it was a really neat exercise. We could try that for maybe the final. So you'd have the whole semester to write your one-page letter. And then we could do something different for the midterm.
I like the idea of things that are practical, that we're going to actually get us to be using, like, so I like the letter idea, but just something practical, that makes us have an everyday almost occurrence,
Yeah, right. And then maybe next semester we look at, one thing that was really fun we did sort of a model speech, like traditional speech making kind of exercise where it wasn't a clan thing, but we did separate into eagles and ravens. We had a scenario. We said, oh, there's a Tequedi person here. So here's the scenario. The Tequedi just raised a totem pole. They invited us for a feast. They raised the pole. They fed us. They gave us gifts. The ravens must now thank them, and the eagles will respond. And it was really neat. And so we could do some kind of scenario like that. That might be something we're more comfortable with next semester, where we do have a whole semester under our belt, but then it's sort of getting into some more formal language. And so maybe this semester is a little bit more informal, so there's not as much pressure. But yeah, the day-to-day stuff is really important. We did puppet shows too. Folks had a lot of fun with puppet shows. You just go on YouTube and put intermediate Tlingit puppet show and you see a bunch of them. They're pretty fun.
Love the letter idea.
Okay. And then we can also work up towards, you know, I know some folks who teach Gwich'in and Yupik, and they're the ones who give me the idea of like start giving people like write a 2-page paper, write a 4-page paper, right? And it's a little bit wild, but it's a really neat it's a really neat idea. So we're getting puppet shows are getting shot down, which is totally fun, right? This is our gang, this is our thing. We could do what we want. And so, oh, now there's a puppet show debate, a hot debate going on in the chat.
I'd like to point out that Kosh, Frank Katas, is a master playwright. So
yeah, you do a whole performance in Tlingit. So maybe a soliloquy, a Tlingit soliloquy. We can put that request out there. But the midterm could be pretty open. Maybe it could be individual or small group language performances. And we could just kind of have it open. And so there's a chance to sort of, poetry can work in Tlingit. I would just ask you're not translating some existing piece of poetry, because that gets ridiculously hard, because then you've got and the metaphors don't always work the same. But then go with your comfort level. If you've been doing this for a while and you feel like you'd like to write a short sort of speech, or if you're not feeling comfortable with putting the language together yet and you would like to read something to us, that's totally fine. If there's any way you could memorize certain portions of it, that's highly encouraged. But I don't want to put any sort of, I don't want to put any like hardcore expectations on there. Like it's got to be 7 minutes, and you know, it's just sort of like pick a thing and do a thing. And I would trust you all to make sure you're pushing yourself, and you're not just doing something that you've done before. That's all I'd ask. That's all I'd ask. If I say asked. And yeah, if you want to make a video, because maybe doing it live makes you nervous, or maybe you have some idea. So some of the things I've seen in the past, I had a student take a promotional video for the Alaska Marine Highway, which I don't even know if they do that type of thing. And they got no money, but they used to make videos, and there'd be nature scenes and stuff. And they basically just erased the whole audio track and just made their own. So they had some nice Ed Littlefield Tlingit jazz going, and then they did basically a commercial for the Marine Highway and Tlingit. It was very fun. Yeah, you could dub a movie scene. It could be funny, it could be fun, it could be serious. I kind of like the wide open thing, so that who knows what we'll see. I had a student who they wrote like a little short, and they filmed the whole little murder thing. It was like called The Killer. It's on YouTube. It was amazing. But you know, you don't have to do something that you think that you're going to enjoy. Do something that's going to push you a little bit, but also know that we'll have some time to work on it. You can ask me some questions. We're going to learn how to pull stuff from all the different resources. With everything that's out there, you could not really know how to speak Tlingit and still make a story and a speech just by using what's out there. But we'll walk through how to do some of that stuff too. Conceptually, whenever you're doing something like this and you're kind of still at these early stages, don't try and make the Tlingit fit the English. So if you have some idea in your mind, let that idea give way to the Tlingit thought world sometimes. That's sort of my general advice. And then my other general advice is do something that's fun, because we are going to get to the hard stuff. And it's going to be really challenging. So the fun stuff, like I like, because I was making this book of how to put the verbs together. And so I'm picking pictures of people laughing and just being silly, because I'm like, yeah, everybody's having fun. But then then I got sneaking the really hard stuff, like, this is so hard. But that's a little different. Like when I was studying Tlingit, like one of my teachers, he would start class by saying, this is probably the hardest language in the whole world. It's really hard. It's like, that's where we're starting from day one. And so I like to sneak that stuff in there. Like I wait till people are months and months into it and they've already invested a bunch of time and money. I'm like, oh, by the way, this is like super crazy hard, but we're gonna call hard fun and interesting. So any other thoughts?
Any thought? Is it true that and maybe this is left field, the Tlingit language is part of the foundation of what is it? Worf from Star Trek.
Klingon.
Klingon. I heard that they use the Tlingit language as part of what their language is in Klingon.
There might be elements of Tlingit, and so I haven't studied Klingon, but I know the Downhowers were pretty hardcore Trekkies, I think. I know there's certain sounds in there. There might be some grammar patterns. It's right there if someone wants to do sort of a grammar analysis of Klingon compared to Tlingit. Or if you just want to take like some scene from Star Trek where there's a Klingon and just dub the Tlingit in there, that'd be really fun. But I don't know, but I will say one time, like I was in a class like in Fairbanks and it was a theory class and it was a bunch of cultural theory stuff. And I was all mad about something. And I said, yeah, there's probably more people who speak Klingon than Tlingit. And I was just, but then this, like, it just sort of morphed into this big argument about whether Klingon was a language or not. And then you had these two groups of people in the class that were like super passionate about both sides, having this super intense argument. But this one girl got confused because she thought they were arguing about whether Tlingit was a language. And then she was looking at me and waiting for me to like go just into warrior mode on somebody. And then I learned later that she thought it was their argument. So it was just kind of fun. But I don't know. I don't know the answer to that specifically. I know people talk like Yoda and Klingon, and sure, have fun with it. But maybe this is where you do like your overdub thing or something. So.
I just ask because I read it somewhere that Tlingit was one of the languages they used as a basis for it. And all these people, these fans that speak Klingon and how hard it is, yet I'm still trying to speak Tlingit.
Yeah, I mean, there's people who speak probably Elvish and there's all kinds of stuff. And hey, right on. We'll keep doing our thing. Okay. Okay, so we got a plan. So midterm, and we'll look at the dates, and you know we're really looking at. Frank says he thought he signed up for Klingon. Don't drop it now. You missed the drop deadline. You're stuck. So a midterm is going to be like something of your choice that we'll just call a language performance. And I just say that because you're just demonstrating, or maybe a demonstration, right? So don't feel pressured, like, and so don't feel pressure. Just have fun. Just engage in the language, put some stuff together, know that you're going to have help along the way. Nothing, it's not like I'm going to sit here and watch it and be like, let's go with C-, right? It's just like, I don't grade these things because I don't like attaching grades to fluency or language performance at all. So there's an insider secret. If it was up to me, like everybody, if you just show up and do what, and you just try, everybody gets A's. Good job, everybody. It's hard enough. We're up against enough. We don't need to be. There are stories. Walter Sobloff gave everybody C-. Everybody got super mad at him. And then they went, the dean at the time went and talked to him, was John Pugh. He said, well, Tlingit's hard. They can't speak it yet. why should I give him something on a C minus? That's doing great. So, but that's just how he thought. And so we had a whole cohort.
C minus. I always got better grades. I took it over and over again because he just gave me good grades.
Maybe it wasn't everybody then. And then how long does it have to be? That's okay. So we're at the intermediate level, so we're talking about minutes, plural. Again, 3 to 5 sounds pretty good to me. Kind of, yeah, I just want to see a good amount of effort and work. I'm not going to attach too much to, I'm not expecting you to go for 20 minutes all in Tlingit, but I do expect something that doesn't have English. And so that's going to be one, you could have an English word, like if you need to say microwave or you need to say PlayStation or whatever the word is, that's fine. But I don't want it to be a whole bunch of English with a little bit of Tlingit sprinkled in. That's not what we're going for. We're going for something where you're doing a thing. You can be creative. You can, I'm a little bit less interested in like, let me show you how to do like Northwest Coast art, but then I'll show you the names for all these different tools. I'm a little bit less interested in that and more like, let me, we're trying to do something entirely in the language. And so that's what we're leaning towards when we move from beginning Tlingit to intermediate towards advanced, is the things we do are just, we start moving into these immersion settings and environments, but also without expectations. So, in terms of where I can help you all along the way, you don't have to decide right now what your thing is going to be. If you got an idea and you want to start working on it, go for it. But you've got some time too. And then for the final, we'll write a one-page letter. So those are, and then we'll just keep learning all the way through, right? So that's what I would like us to do. I know in the syllabus, just so that we're clear, I had like, you're going to turn in these vocabulary sheets and stuff, but I think we're not going to do that. We're going to do some things. And then probably what we'll start doing is on Thursdays, I'll give you a weekend kind of assignment, right? Like go look at this thing, go look at that thing, go do this thing. And then, and keep talking. If you're not sure what you want to do, don't freak out either, because we got some time to decide. So any questions or thoughts? All right, sheesh. So let's keep taking a look at the beginning Tlingit workbook. We're kind of doing just a quick cruise through the whole document, just so we can talk about the major concepts that are in there, and then get to some other things like these translation work that we were just doing, and then a few more kind of advanced things where we're going to learn how to do a bunch of stuff that allows us to move from memorizing chunks of language to assembling the language in our mind, but then also receiving it and being able to sort of interpret what we're receiving. And you're going to reach a point, if you keep going with Tlingit, you're going to reach a point where you stop translating. And that's a very, honestly, it's a scary moment for a lot of people, because the English brain always wants to know what's going on. And at some point, the language starts moving fast enough where you're speaking it and hearing it. And I just started thinking about this when people would talk to me. They say, I'm sitting there listening to an elder, I'm good for about 2 minutes, and all of a sudden I just can't follow what they're saying. And I said, well, I think your brain is getting tired from translating, and you need to stop translating it into English for yourself. And that's a really hard thing, because that's when you get to nesting these whole languages in your mind, in your spirit, in your body. And so that's really a big thing that we're trying to do. So as we look at the workbook, we're looking at these concepts, but then we're also learning how to take these things into other areas, right? Okay, so we did this. We'll probably practice a few of these dialogues now and then. So I'll probably just break you guys into pairs randomly and just have you practice this, and then we'll come back and do that. So we'll probably do that on Thursday. We'll just pick a couple of these dialogues. And we'll just break into pairs, and then we'll practice it and then come back and perform it for each other, just for fun. But for now, let's just look at some more names of things, okay? Zait. Tsa. Anquegi. Eat. Incheyi. Speak.
Eek.
So I want to back up and look at these for a second. So sometimes once there's a couple things that do happen sometimes. Yes, I think, did we do water animals? I think we did that last time, didn't we? Okay, so Thursday, plants. Okay, we're just gonna name as many plants as we can. This is gonna include berries, trees, grasses, mosses. So go assemble your lists. And then when we start though, you can't look at your paper, even though we might not know if you are, but just try not to do it. So once we see this apostrophe, right, so we're shutting off our lungs to make this sound. So instead of k, we go k. So when we shut the lungs off to make this sound, there's a couple things that sometimes happen. One is there's a gap before we turn our lungs back on. So sometimes people will say in che. So there's that gap where we want to move towards in che. So the first sound goes right into the vowel. The other thing that sometimes happens is once we start with this, we'll do this on the next consonant. So this should sound like speak, but sometimes we're going to go speak, just because our brain gets into this like shut the lungs off mode. So just keep an eye out for those things, as watching that gap and making sure the next sound, unless you see that apostrophe, it's not going to have that. Again, so this is a 3-letter word, e, k. This one, 1, 2, 3, ch, 4, the vowel 5, 6, 7, 7-letter word. In che. Okay. Tsi. Kot. Zisk. Acho achoa. Sisk. Hoots. Hwasta. Gach. Okay, I think we did a little bit of this as well. So chat, wa ho, right? Me, you, them. That singular them. Ach, I, do. My, your, theirs. A singular they, right? So this is where the d pops up. It's a different one than we see in some of those verbs, like tu. It's a different one. Right, there are multiple ones, they just happen to sound the same. Then we get into objects, and so in a couple chapters after this, hopefully by next week, we're going to be jamming out some of these objects, right? Happened to me, happened to you, happened to them. So that's what the object is. It's like who the verb happened to. But in Tlingit, this is also a lot of the state verbs, right? I'm good. You're good. They are good. Or the subject is the one who does it. I'm eating it. Echa, you're eating it. Acha, they are eating it. And so there's a couple of sneaky things that go on here. One, the object must come first, then the subject. So here's here's cha, ich sechan, I, you, I love. Chat isechan, me, you, love. So it must always go in that order. So that's one, it's not negotiable. And sometimes it's a little bit confusing because you do have ach and chat and cha, and they all have that ch and the vowel, but they are different. Ach in kananig. Tell me. Tell it to me, right? Okay, so and we'll look at those, but we're doing a little bit of a preview about what the differences are between these 4 types of pronouns, okay? So for the possessive pronoun, I'm gonna ask you all, we're gonna take turns doing this one. So I'll just go by then, and feel free to put your, if you have a Tlingit name, or if you have a Tlingit class name, feel free to change your name when you log in to whatever you want to be called, because that's what we'll start calling you. And then we'll do a couple things, I think, on once we get to the chapter on clans and identities and stuff like that. We'll talk about how to talk about other people too. Okay. So here's a dasa. And then, so this is a what type of question. The I is your. G, the J-E-E. That word means possession. So achji, my possession. Iji, your possession. It's not in hand, because I could say yak achjiwu, and I don't have to be holding it. Just mean I have a boat. The w part is the same thing in gusu, yadu, weidu, heidu, you do. So even though in English there is a verb here, there's no verb in Tlingit. You cannot use the same thing to say used to have or will have. It must switch to a verb in those cases. But you can say have, don't have. And so we'll start with have. So pick any noun you want to. I'm just going to ask you, dasa ijiwu. You don't have to actually have it. You can just say whatever the thing is, and then say ach jiwu. Okay. So we're going to practice the I to the ach. So everybody repeat after me. Ijiwu.
Ijiwu.
Ach jiwu.
Ach jiwu.
Ijiwu.
Ijiwu.
Ach jiwu.
Ach jiwu.
The I and the ach. I, ach, I, ach. Talking to you, what do you have? All right. Okay. So let me open this, and I'm just gonna go in the order that I see folks right now. And I don't know if it'll change on me. Let's see. S'achtlek, dasa ijiwu.
Cook akjiwu.
Okay. Pusin, dasa ijiwu.
Kis ajiwu.
Dasa?
Kis ajiwu.
Okay. Kuk, dasa ijiwu.
Bukwena ach jiwu.
Okay. Chance, dasa ijiwu.
Saknein ahu. Yeah. Saknein achjiwu.
Okay. Atagweki, dasa ijiwu.
Kawut akjiwu.
Okay. Kashuk kawadai dasa ijiwu.
In achjiwu.
Okay. Let's see. Wait, it's moving around. Okay. Knock. Dasa ejiwu.
Sadly ach jiwu.
Ishachait. Kash. Dasa ejiwu.
Oh, I was muted. Kahwe ach jiwu.
Yak Star. Dasa ejiwu.
Tas ijuwa.
Okay. Melato. Khan kananik wasa khadu ka isai.
Nila Torah.
Nila Torah. Dasa ejiwu.
Gucha ach jiwu.
Sheesh. At the khatna. Elias. Dasa ejiwu. Mute. Kai.
Wakdana Achjiwu.
Kuchain. Dasa ejiwu.
Ku
Tuyanaka.
Kuahira Achjiwu.
Yak Shachuka. Dasa ejiwu.
Hat ach jiwu.
Shawat Klenk. Dasa ejiwu.
San ach jiwu.
Juan Plain. Wake. Dasa ejiwu.
Khatea kuchida achjiwu tso.
Ha. Yak Good cheese. Khatqatin achjiwu. Yak Good cheese. Okay, so then there's a question and answer drill. We're not going to do it. I'll just sort of tell you what this does, and you could practice it if you want to. If you feel like you don't, what this does is really works on the do. So basically, what we would do is would have a whole bunch of different things, like stuffed animals and what we call like realia. So that would have a cup and would have a kuhida and would have objects that we know the names of. It might be keet. And then I would say dasa achjiwu. And then you would say something ijiwu, right? So you get gucha ijiwu. Then I'd say dasa ijiwu. Kuhida achjiwu. Dasa dujiwu. Then you would look at that person. And then you would have the du. Right, so what we're really working on here is a match of things, sort of like dasaya, and then figuring out if it should be aya or awe, here or there. In this case, achjiwu, ijiwu, dujiwu. So then that's the thing we're trying to line up. Oh, he said achjiwu, so I gotta say ijiwu. Then he said ijiwu, so I gotta say achjiwu. So that's really what this sort of section is working on. And so the next thing we can ask is ge, right? Dana ge ejiwu. Do you have money? Hin ge ejiwu. Do you have water? Right? And so this is a useful phrase. We're all going to go somewhere. And so I might ask, do you have this thing that you need? Una ge ejiwu. Gao ge ejiwu. Right? And so there's a whole bunch of things. So beginning Tlingit is really built on these fill-in-the-blank phrases, right? The other thing is now we start to look at a negative. This is not a verb, but this w means to be located somewhere. Jiwu, it's at the possession of, it's at my possession. So if you don't have it, you cannot say tlech ach jiwu. You should be saying tlech ach ji, because it's not there. It's not there. So this is the thing where like, Dana gauge, you would take Dana ach ji. I ain't got no money. Kachin ach ji. I got no water. Right? So this is the thing, and it sets us up for the verbs. Once klech pops up, something's got to change. This is one of the it's a foundational thing in Tlingit. The negative is going to, it's got to change something. That's usually how it works, right? So for example, if I said gusu wa'eh, a lot of us have kind of heard this phrase, yadu khat, here I am, right? But if we're all a group and like let's say we went on a hike and then we all went and picked some berries and then we came back and then I might say gusu kash, because I don't see him. To say he's not here, you go from yadu to kesh yat hu. Kesh yat hu. He's not here. A similar thing, this can only be there in the positive form. Any questions about that? Okay. So then it starts to push another type of question. Adusa blank dujiwu. Adusa dana dujiwu. Who's got the money, right? Adusa kuhida dujiwu. Adusa gao dujiwu. Who has the drum? Who has the pencil? So here you're going to say, there's a couple different ways you could answer this, right? So if I'm asking who, you could say kashuk kawadai kuhida dujiwu. Or kuhida dujiwu kashuk kawadai. So again, it's coming back to the octopus thing. You can move them around a little bit, but you couldn't say kashuk kawadai duji, or well, I guess you could do that. Yeah, dujiwu kuhida gets a little bit awkward. It almost sounds like the pencil has him. Okay. Then we get our first verb. So we have seen a couple of verbs, but now we're getting a verb and we're going to start to change it a little bit. So in this case, it's another what question. Dasa iatin. We're paying close attention to the vowel in the verb. Teen, right? It's long and high. Teen. Dasa iatin. So now we have a subject pronoun. But once we're doing beginning Tlingit, we're not going to like just really stop and talk about subject pronouns. We're just going to say, oh, look at this. Chatin, I see it. Iatin, you see it. Right? Chatin, iatin, chatin, iatin. But this only works for right now. This doesn't work for like yesterday I saw a tree. The other thing it doesn't work for is really specific things. I saw your brother yesterday. That wouldn't be chatin because that's a specific thing. It would switch to chwasatin. But for now, this chatin, I saw a dog, I saw a whale, I saw a house, I saw a car. It's just seeing things. Right? So that's what the chatin is asking. So here in this chapter, we're still working with stuffed animals and stuff. So I say, kuhida get iatin. Do you see a pencil? Kawakan get iatin. You see a deer? Then you can say or take, right? Okay. That's the whole chapter. So let's see what we know.
But Claire Quatin, doesn't the verb change?
Well, Claire Chatin, I see berries.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
No.
So go ahead.
The last sentence seemed to say the verb was the same whether I said yes or no.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so, okay. Good point. So what this is not saying, so with this one, we're not introducing negative verbs yet. So basically, I would hold something up and say, Yai get iatin, kaik kuhidachatin. So you're correcting to what you actually see. You would say kechwatin. I don't see it. Kechyai chwatin. I don't see a whale. But we're not, as far as the order of words, we'll introduce the negatives later because they do get they change quite a bit.
Thank you.
Yeah, good observation though. Okay, translators. Somebody translate this for me. So this one is akadunik, is translation. That's the word for translation. Okay, tell me in English. Dasa ijiwu.
What do you have?
What do you have? And if you've already answered, give someone else a chance. Dasa dujiwu.
What do they have?
Yeah, what? Gauchatin.
Duck.
I didn't catch the first part.
A duck?
I see a duck.
I see a duck. Gusudzisko.
I see a moose. Oh, no, that's a moose.
The gusu.
Where is the moose?
Yeah, away.
Or owl.
Or owl. If you're in Klukwan, you're asking about an owl. If you're outside of Klukwan, you're asking about a moose. Chuts akya.
Is that a brown bear over there?
Yes, is that a brown bear over there? Chat.
Me.
Ach.
Mine.
My. Yeah, away. Just my. M-Y. Yeah, away. Now, translate it into Tlingit. What does she or, oh, I got to change that to they. Dang it. What do they have? The singular they. Dasatujiwu.
No ge?
No ge.
Oh, because it's a question, because dasa.
The ge must be the yes or no. And so you can't combine them, right? Because then it would be like, what do they have? It's a do they or a does they? Or what do? Sorry. Do you have money?
Cake. Dana gay iju.
Yeah, away. Yeah, away. Do you see a boat?
Somebody said it and it came really quiet.
Oh, yeah. So, Christine, it's coming through really quiet for some reason. Yishan. Yak ge yatin. I'll assume that's what you said, right? Okay. Yak ge yatin. You.
E.
That's not incorrect, because as an object, that would be correct. So I guess I need to. What's another way we could say you?
What a?
What
Is that a seal?
Sake.
Sake. That was a ge, but we got to add two more parts on either side of that ge. Aqua. Saw aqua. Is that a seal? Okay. Good job. So we've retired this one. For some, it's a review. If you feel like there's things in there that you're not sure about yet, there's beginning classes that do go over this. We could certainly bring some stuff up. There's also the open study room that we have now. So there's a Zoom link specifically for getting together and studying. And if you feel like there's portions of this, we could sort of try and find teams to sort of look at portions of it. And you're going to see it again. It's going to keep coming up, the akwe and akya and the ge and also the dasa. And so we're starting to see how these things get put together. And so this next chapter does go into name, lineage, belonging to certain places. It's got a list of all the known clans, and there's probably some that are still not on the list. And so we're not going to go through the whole list of clans, but just know that it's there. I tried to list them by migrations and groups, which is a complicated thing. Apparently somebody was on Problem Corner yesterday saying people shouldn't publish anything about clans or something. And I didn't catch it. Somebody was just telling me all about it. And then, but anyways, so I'm not trying to tell anybody who they are, but I'm just trying to capture that information so that we know, we could teach about it, because we have to teach people how these clans came to be, how they're related, how they interact with each other. There's so many shared names and other things like that. There's crests, there's locations, there's houses. It's all very important. And it's not something that's, I wouldn't say it's common knowledge right now, not among our people. So that's next for Thursday. Well, I said Thursday we're going to do plants. So try and find as many names of plants as you can. And so we'll start Thursday with the plant naming game. I don't want to call it competition. And then bring any questions you got. We're going to go through chapter 3 and chapter 4. So that's our goal for this week, is to just keep cruising through there. Then at some point, I'm going to throw in some other stuff. We'll keep looking at the little readings. Once we're done with the beginning Tlingit workbook, the next thing we're going to go into is how to put suffixes onto nouns, which is, some of you might have gone through it before, but it's a good way to start setting up some other conversations about putting suffixes on other things. Okay. Ganashchi Shuhan, Wukecha, Wushekach Tustin.
What's
Goodness, cheese.
Do you have a moment I can ask you about a language question, brother?
Ah.
All right. I'll just wait for a minute before it's still recording.